Hunstmen is getting a content update on the 27th of March, and I want to go over some of the important features that are coming that we got in an update on the 22nd. Basically making a bunch of changes to pollution, gameplay, and mod conversion. Basically progression in general is getting a bit of an overhaul, which is much appreciated as people are starting to get burnt out and starting to show the problems of the in-game systems, and it's nice that they're working to address these. To start off with, they're reworking pollution zones. Personally, I don't really care about this, but if you're interested in that, it might be something to point out. I will leave the patch note links in the description if you're willing to check that out or want to check it out. Before we get into today's video, I quickly want to go over the sponsor, which is Hunstmen. Hunstmen Mobile is officially releasing on April the 23rd. It's one of the most anticipated post-apocalyptic open world survival games with a supernatural open world, bizarre themes and deviants so you can face off against terrifying mutated creatures, a multiplayer experience where you can team up or battle it out, a survival and base building system where you can gather resources, craft and fortify your shelter, and a deviation system with unique abilities. Join over 30 million other pre-registered players with the link in the description. But they're basically just making some slight changes that I don't think is going to change too much. They're adding a small wave-based attack system called the Veil of Tranquility, which you have to basically kill deviants that might attack you in a pollution zone. But the next thing is pretty exciting. The in-game Rosetta settlement is getting a bit of a rework as well, including a new event. So while exploring the high difficulty Rosetta settlement, especially on Manibus and Evo called the top of the map, a secret Rosetta convoy event may be randomly triggered in this area. And if you steal the convoy crate from the Rosetta, you'll be hunted by a large number of Rosetta elites, and you must evade their pursuit until their convoy is unlocked, or the convoy crate is unlocked, sorry. The convoy crate contains a large amount of control units, which I think is a new resource, new currency maybe, which can be used to craft bullets and tactical items. So maybe this is a cheaper, efficient way to get legendary bullets or tactical items, which is a nice welcome addition, and add some more dynamic elements, I guess, to the game, to the map, which is always appreciated. The next is some gameplay optimizations, and these are actually pretty important and significantly impact sort of the in-game builds and such. So they're effectively removing all of the anti-type effects from the cradle, which is a great change that was super annoying, and honestly don't really even know why I got introduced in the first place. And now they're going to be making it a bullet type, or a craftable effect to add onto ammunition. So when you go to your supply bench, you'll actually be able to add the coherence or anti-type effect you want to your ammunition, then use on super anomalies, which I think is a really good way of doing it. And this doesn't just extend to anti-type effects. This also includes the bullet type effects you would find exclusively on weapon blueprints themselves, which is, in my opinion, the bigger change here, is this is actually going to fundamentally change the viable builds you can use in certain bosses. So suppression and penetration, which would previously be exclusive to certain blueprints, is now a craftable ammo type, just like the anti-types, just like your previous legendary ammo types that you had pre-patch. You are now going to be able to add suppression onto the AP ammo types. So you can have stronger bullets against deviants and humanoids, which I believe is Rosetta. We will have to test if the penetration AP ammo works on metas. But this is a fantastic change, and I'm really happy that this is done, as it opens up build variety for in-game content. I know some people liked it, but I personally think more build freedom is better for in-game, and just skill expression in general. It gives you more options on what you want to min-max your damage for. Now, of course, still going to have bosses that don't have weak spots and such, but this is a greater step towards build freedom or build variety, which is always good in a game with a lot of options. Other combat item adjustments is they're adding the effect types, the anti-type effects, to tactical items as well. So, for example, you could run around with Molotovs that have the anti-coherence type on them without needing specific bullets in your main gun. So you could use Molotovs or grenades to knock the anti-coherence off an elite or a super enemy, or a super anomaly, sorry. And then you could switch to your normal gun to deal the DPS once the shield is off, which is another way you can now have more unique builds without having to be as restricted as you were previously, especially with the anti-type cradles, which is fantastic. They're also introducing new tactical items. As we know, or if you didn't know, they're adding nightmare silos to Manibus. which will be expanded to other scenarios over time, but first it's landing in Manibus. These will yield better rewards, but also to offset that, if they are a challenge for you, they're going to be adding new tactical items that you can utilize to your advantage. First one is called the Shield Matrix, which is effectively a shield that deploys at the user's location and will block all incoming bullets and projectiles, which is pretty neat. It will still allow enemies to pass through the shield, but again, it will prevent the projectiles, which I think is a neat change. The second new tactical item is the Mr. Wish rocket launcher. This one I thought was pretty funny. It's basically a homing rocket launcher where you can control the rocket or control Mr. Wish and guide him to the enemy and deal an explosive area of damage, which I think is pretty cool. And the third and last but not least is finally here is the flamethrower. It's not just the original flamethrower we had in the CBT 2 and 3, it is a new, I guess, elemental flamethrower. It's called the Wildfire Flamethrower, which has got like a blue flame. It looks pretty cool. And you will be able to, again, craft this as a tactical item, which is pretty neat. And you will be able to craft the canisters for the ammo at the supply bench as well. And also want to quickly mention these three new sort of OP tactical items are exclusive to PvE servers to preserve PvP balance, which is now going to be a priority for the developers. We'll have more news on PvP balance soon, but for now, this is a really, really good change. And it again gives you more build diversity, especially in PvE, and more ways to tackle the new harder difficulty that's going to be coming in the form of nightmare silos. They're going to be introducing new mimic specialization systems specifically for Manibus and Prime Wars. You're going to be having new ways to effectively participate with plasma missiles, plasma rockets, plasma grenades. So if that's your sort of thing, then that is absolutely something to look out for. Basically more ways to play Prime Wars, and that's always a welcome change. Now, I don't personally do Prime Wars or Manibus myself, but for those of you that do enjoy that content, you have more options now, which is always good. As I said at the start, build a variety gives you more things to do. Resource balance adjustment. Now, this one is, I would say, a pretty big change, but more or less for early game. Not too much has changed for late game, but early game is now going to yield more resources and feel more fluid and less grindy. Which I know for me is that early game burnout really hits when you do like 6 or 7 scenarios. You know, getting your tier 1, 2, 3 weapons off the bat can be a little bit tedious when you do it so many times. So they've refined that experience, and now you're going to be yielding a lot more early game resources, which is fantastic. So you're going to be getting more energy links, stardust, and barreled source early game than you would late game. So there is a little bit of a nerf to in game, but it's not as much as I thought it was going to be, which is nice. So they've basically increased the value of resources obtained from pollution zones, such as Stardust ore, but reduced their respawn frequency. So if you're a Stardust ore farmer, then that's probably something to keep in mind. They've adjusted the conversion rates of some medic specializations, including Sulfur Chemists, so that might have copped a little bit of a nerf, which I think is fine. I don't think many people use Sulfur Chemist anymore anyways. Oil Processing, on the other hand, was one that I think a lot of people used. So that's important to note there. Now, the changes to Securement Silos, Dungeons, and Leer Labs, this might be a little bit more interesting to you, especially if you're a mod farmer like me. Normal and hard silos now yield 20% more Stardust and 20% more energy links. So this helps again with that phase 3. I think it's going to be phase 2 now, because I've readjusted the way phases work. So from phase 2, when hard mode unlocks, you're basically going to be getting 20% more resources, which is actually quite nice. Now for Pro, they've reduced Stardust source yield by 10%, which is a pretty small nerf. I'm not going to really complain about that. Same with the energy links have been nerfed by 10% in Pro, so you're still going to be getting more than hard and normal, but you're going to be getting a little bit less than you currently do. And I think by the time most people hit Pro mode anyways, you already have an abundance of energy links and Stardust source anyways, so it's not really too much of a hit. Changes to the Prime War, normal and hard mode. Stardust source plus 10% and barreled premium fuel plus 20%. Which I guess is a welcome change, especially if you do a lot of Prime Wars. But for Pro and Nightmare Prime Wars, Stardust source minus 10% and barrel premium fuel minus 20%. Again, I think by the time you're at Pro and Nightmare in Once Human, you're going to have an abundance of these resources anyways, but I guess it's a change nonetheless that's important to some people. Chaos Weavers now. Again, I don't really play Way of Winter, so this isn't really my cup of tea, but Scenario Phases 2 and 3 yield 10% more Stardust, and Scenario Phase 4 yields minus 10%. Sorry, Nick, you lose 10% Stardust. I read that wrong. So if you're a Way of Winter enjoyer, it's a little bit of a resource nerf on the Chaos Weavers there. Evolution's cool engagement zone. So I don't really care about this one, even though I main Evolution's cool. I think that the engagement zones were never utilized anyways, and I don't really understand the nerf. So starter source, production efficiency and storage limit plus 10%. So effectively, if you're using a mining platform, you'll be able to get even more yield out of it before it stops production. So if you leave it overnight, even though most people go by and steal your Stardust anyways, that would be me stealing people's Stardust, but you get 10% more out of it. I guess that's whatever. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really ever get to cap anyways on an active server. Barrel premium fuel is minus 15% on storage and production efficiency. Again, it doesn't really matter. Like, the amount of barreled premium fuel you get on Evolution School is nuts. I think on my last Evolution School, I had something like 4,000 barrel premium fuel, so minus 15%. Public crisis events. So they've increased the yield on public crisis events, which is much more welcome. This is actually one of the nicer changes here, is there's more reward to events, and specifically high-risk public crisis events now yield rubber as well, which is very much welcome. As rubber was always one of those resources that I felt like was one of the more tedious ones to farm out. We had to go and visit POIs. Now you'll be able to get that from your high-risk events as well, just like you did with your plastics and your fabrics. So there's a much welcome change. Mimetic specializations, they've also done some changes here. So oil processing, Stardust ore consumption reduced from 50 to 20%. Sulfur chemist production time increased from 5 to 8 minutes. Energy link consumption increased from 50 to 100. So that's almost a double increase on sulfur chemist there. So if you did use sulfur chemist, you're going to be looking at double the spending on the energy links, which can actually be quite a lot. So that's actually a pretty big change, I reckon. And also increasing that production time from 5 to 8 minutes is almost double as well. So sulfur chemist got a pretty big nerf there, and so did oil processing. 50 to 25 is also a 50% reduction, which is pretty big. Stardust mining platform efficiency now fluctuates slightly based on contamination. Now I don't really do Stardust mining. If you do, I know a lot of people do. That's going to be a pretty big hit, I think, especially because it fluctuates based on contamination, so it's going to be a variable factor now that you have to look into. Now, material point adjustments. They've reduced the amount of, or the pricing of stuff when you transfer it from your backpack in Eternalland to a server. Personally, you should never really like bring this stuff over anyways, but I don't know, some people do bring this stuff over, so that might be important for you. But acid is now 10, or sorry, was 10 points and is now 8 points, so it got a reduction. I don't know many people that bring acid over. It's pretty easy to get. Starter source, again, I don't really know many people that bring that resource over from their backpack either. So that's gone from 2 to 3. Barrel premium fuel, 100 to 80. That's, yeah, again, like these resource adjustments for material points here, I don't know who's bringing this over from their Eternalland backpack anyways. Seems like a bit of a waste, but, you know, if that's for you, you might go for it. Mod conversion adjustments. Now, this is a big change. So, we've heard your frustration about the grind for high rarity mods. With the deprecation of controllers, we're overhauling the mod conversion system to improve fairness and accessibility. What this means is increase the overall probability of obtaining high level mods. Please tell me we're looking at triple purple. Please tell me we're looking at triple purple. Nightmare, Silos, or Manibus, please let us get triple purple. I'll be so happy. When converting mods of the lowest initial level, there is now also a chance of obtaining mods with epic attributes. So basically, even if you're not doing an epic or epic conversion, there's still a chance you get epic attributes, which is much welcome. The higher the total initial level of the mods being converted, the higher the minimum rarity of the mods obtained, and the greater the chance of obtaining high rarity mods. So that's just another nice change there, that we're going to be seeing high rarity mods overall, and I don't know how this is going to impact the grind. I still think getting good attribute rolls is going to be a slim pickings chance, but at the very least you're going to be seeing higher rarity, which is always welcome. And these adjustments are not final, so they could change by the 27th of March, but as it stands now, these are the changes we're going to be looking at, and we will get more patch notes for the whole update in the coming days, and I will be sure to update you guys as soon as that happens. And I'll see you guys in the next video.